Take care. Yeah.
Family? Those are cleaning.
One second, he's doing knocking me out.
We pick them up for the grandchildren. We're all okay. We hit COVID stuff. We can all be together. Okay. Oh, yeah. Go ahead. I'm trying to get more chairs.
No, 1 second. Good, okay.
Ralph, is this distance okay for you?
It's okay. Good morning. Good Yontif. Today is Hoshana Rabbah. It's the 7th day of Sukkot and officially the last day of the Sukkot festival. Tonight we usher in Shabbat and the festival of Shmini Atzeret, followed by Simchat Torah. The designation of this day is not biblical or Talmudic. The rabbis of France and Germany, the very area where Gunther Marx was born, designated so in the Middle Ages. The Kabbalists gave Hoshana Rabbah a status similar to Yom Kippur. It represents the closing of the 3 books that were opened on Rosh Hashanah and sealed on Yom Kippur. Today, we close the book of our beloved Gunther Marx and welcome him to his final resting place with the following words. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, praised is the judge of truth. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai Natan va'Adonai Lakach. God has given and God has taken. Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Praise be the name of Adonai. I welcome now Rabbi Jeffrey Weil, Rabbi of Congregation Ezra Banim, the Niles Township Congregation in Skokie.
Thank you, Rabbi Rubner. This Psalm 15, which I will read next, talks about one who is upright, who does justly, who doesn't shame others, who's just a mensch. And so it's an appropriate choice of psalm as we honor the life and say farewell to Gunther Marx. Adonai mi yagor ba'ohalecha, mi yishkon b'har kodshecha, holech tamim upo'el tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo. O eternal God, who may abide in your house, who may dwell upon your holy mountain. It is those who are upright, who do justly, who speak truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who would not exploit others or take bribes. Those who live in that way shall never be shaken. And then the beautiful 121st Psalm. Esa enai el harim me'an yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. I lift up mine eyes unto the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from the eternal God, osei shamayim va'aretz, the one who makes heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. Behold, the Shomer Yisrael, the protector of Israel, neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian and your protection at your right hand. May the sun not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. May God guard you from all harm. May God guard your soul, your going out and your coming forth, now and forever. And then the well-known words of the 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes, or in Hebrew Kohelet, which we actually read at this season. During Sukkot week, we read the verses, the chapters of Ecclesiastes, and these verses push us towards the idea, even when it's hard to accept, especially when we understand how inhumane people could be to other human beings, that things are still unfolding in the world the way they ought to. It's a tough thing to understand sometimes, but our tradition nudges us in that direction. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot that which is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve, a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time when we must refrain from our embraces, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time for silence and a time to speak.
Thank you, Rabbi Weil. Dear Margot, Esther, and Ken, and Esther's family, Karen, Chad, Ella, and Tessa, Jennifer, Justin, Noah, and Ari, Fred Diamond, and cousins Sharon, Parker, Nancy Eisenberg, and Marion Derringer, and cousins and dear friends who are streaming the service at this time. And to Ken's family, Kate and daughters Reagan, Aaron, and Haley, and grandsons Evan, Miles, and Bryant. To all of you, we extend our deep condolences and share in your grief. We mourn the death of your beloved Gunther Hugo Marx, the son of Ernst and Edith Marx, Meir ben Yitzchak Vechava, husband, father, grandfather of 5, and great-grandfather of 7. In Pirkei Avot, the sayings of our ancestors, we read, Ezehu mechubad, who is honored. One who honors, loves, and cares for other human beings. That was Gunther Marx. We're here to honor his memory today and to recount his legacy. It is an end of a 97-year journey, and what an amazing journey it has been. Gunther was born on October 16, 1923, in the city of Mainz in Germany. He was a proud citizen of a city that was started out in the year 13 before the Common Era as a Roman fortress, which was called Moguntia by the Roman troops who had advanced along the Rhine River. And the city and this fortress were located at the junction of the Rhine River and the Main River. His father Ernst, with his brother Eugene, owned a brick factory. One day, while digging for clay, they came upon a Roman cemetery. They immediately notified the antiquities department of the city, and when they excavated the site, they found Roman artifacts. Later, they took these items, restored them, and placed them in a special room in the city's museum, and named the room after his grandfather, Ludwig Marx. By the time Gunther reached the age of 10, Hitler had assumed absolute power in Germany. Jewish students, including Gunther, were expelled from public schools, and they were forced to attend a school housed in a building that was attached to their synagogue. On his way to school in the morning of November 10, 1938, following the night of broken glass, Kristallnacht, he found the synagogue and the school building in flames. And he writes, "That was the end of my formal education." During Kristallnacht, Nazi thugs vandalized their home and destroyed many precious family heirlooms. The next day, when Nazi officials came to the house, they forced his father to sign a bill of sale and to turn over the brick factory to them. Immediately thereafter, his father applied for visas to the United States and other countries. Charged with a bogus scheme in the application for visa with the United States, his father and mother were arrested by the Gestapo, and they were locked up in jail for a number of weeks. The two children were left alone. Gunther, age 16, and sister Inge, age 17. These youngsters had to cope with a lot of responsibilities. The sale of the house to neighbors, a move to some rented facility where Inge provided food for them. She cooked for the two of them and was also cooking for the landlord. And Gunther, at that young age, went to work for the new owners of the factory, the brick factory, working at hard labor, heavy labor, 10 hours a day. But this paid for food, it paid for rent, and when the parents were eventually released, they came together again. Not long after that, they received visas to go to the one country that was willing to accept them at that time, the Dominican Republic. And this was done with the financial assistance of his grandmother, who had previously emigrated to New York, and his uncle Eugene, who found his way to Chicago with his family. They traveled halfway around the world to their destination. The journey in October of 1940 from Berlin to Moscow on a DC-3 plane, and from there on a Trans-Siberian train to Japanese-occupied northern China, arriving in the city of Harbin. And from there, after the help of the Jewish community, they took a train throughout China to Korea, and from Korea by boat to Japan. From there, they were able to find a cargo ship, a freighter, which traveled the Pacific Ocean, first to Hawaii, but they were not allowed to walk off the ship, then to California, Mexico, El Salvador, and temporarily arriving in Panama. There they rented rooms for what they believed was just a very short temporary stay on the way to the Dominican Republic. However, they secured employment. Gunther worked in the Army-Navy store, which happened to be owned by a Jewish family that had emigrated from Brooklyn. He then worked as an ornamental iron shop at a shop, and finally at a Buick dealership where he learned to repair automobiles. His sister Inga found employment as a waitress. She met through this employment a man who came originally from Romania. They fell in love and they got married. Gunther's new brother-in-law was able to obtain for them permission from the authorities to stay longer in Panama and help them obtain entry papers to the United States on the Panama quota. They never did make it to the Dominican Republic. In April 1941, they boarded a cruise ship to the United States and arrived in New York City. With the help of his grandmother and Hayes, they got temporary housing and meals. 4 weeks or so later, they boarded a Greyhound bus to Chicago, where his Uncle Eugene and family had already settled. They got an apartment on the north side of Chicago, next to Eugene and his family. They went to work right away. Mother painting figurines and Gunther working in a factory making steel furniture. He attempted to enroll at a high school, and the one that looked promising was Senn in Chicago. And he chose that school because not only was he he was hoping to do academic work and complete his studies within a short period of time, but also to do work in their shop, a mechanic shop. However, as things turned out, the shop was closed because the war efforts required the people to be engaged in the production of war materials. Nonetheless, he graduated in the spring of 1943, and he did everything in 2 years, 4 years of high school in 2, not speaking English before arriving in the United States. He received a military deferment while he was in high school, but immediately, right after graduation, he was drafted and sent for basic training to California. While at Camp McQuaid, he was sworn in as a citizen in San Francisco. He described that moment, and I quote, as one of the highlights of my life. He had a short-lived college experience while in the Army, trying to study engineering at the University of Kentucky. But the Army had other plans for him. They sent him to Maryland, where he was trained to repair non-electric fire control instruments. And then he went to Camp Campbell in Kentucky, and finally deployed to India and then Burma, Myanmar today. The day that they arrived in Kolkata in India, the atomic bomb had been dropped on Nagasaki. And basically that was the end of the Pacific War. He spent months in Burma and India shipping military equipment back to the United States. He was discharged at Camp McCoy in Wisconsin and then returned to Chicago, where he finally was able to, once again, enroll in a program, this time in a watch repair program under the GI Bill. While studying in night school, he worked daytime in a shop making silver initial jewelry. He eventually saved some money and purchased a small store on Broadway near Bryn Mawr. He also moved out of his parental home. Years later, his store was on Bryn Mawr next to the L station. Through a close friend, he met Diane Dolfeld, a concentration camp survivor. According to Gunther, 4 years of misery left her with traumas which she could never overcome. She was 16 years old when she was liberated, weighing 60 pounds. Gunther and Diane were married on April 1, 1951, and exactly to the day, 1 year later, their son Ken was born. The following year, Diane was stricken with multiple sclerosis, MS, which left her in a few years totally paralyzed. Gunther took the best care a husband could offer and gave her love and support. She died in 1959, leaving him and 7-year-old Ken to take care of. Life became better. Through a friend, he was introduced in Chicago to her cousin Margot Wessel of Philadelphia, who had been recently widowed herself and was a mother of 9-year-old daughter Esther. They carried on a long-distance relationship, a courtship, and then got married. And he writes, "I consider myself fortunate to have found a lifelong companion, and Margot was a caring mother for my son, and Esther turned out to be a loving daughter. This," he said, "is proof that most clouds have a silver lining." They were happily married for 60 years. After retirement, 47 years after work in the jewelry business, they sold their Chicago home, moved to Tucson, Arizona, but with aging and medical issues, they finally decided to return to Chicago to be closer to Esther and her family. I mentioned earlier, today is the last day of the festival of Sukkot. We associate this holiday with a mitzvah to sit, to dwell in a sukkah, as a remembrance of our exodus from Egypt and our temporary dwelling in our long journey in the desert. Gunther knew what it means to be exiled from one's home and to seek refuge in an endless journey. The sukkah reminds us how fragile life is and that nothing in life is permanent. Gunther knew this extremely well. In the Hashkivenu prayer, we acknowledge our dependence on God and we pray, Ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha, spread over us your sukkah, your shelter of peace. For Gunther, his loving and caring Margot, and his children, and his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren, they together with his strong religious faith, created for him a Sukkot Shalom, a shelter of peace. We associate 4 plant species, as we read in Leviticus 23:40, with the festival of Sukkot. Each one alludes to Adonai, to our God. Lulav, etrog, the myrtle leaves, and the willow branches. Lulav, the palm tree branch. Etrog, the citron fruit. Hadas, the myrtle leaves. Arava, the willow branch. And we bind them together, and we wave them in the synagogue and in the sukkah. According to our sages, they represent the human body through which we are to serve God. The lulav refers to the backbone, to be upright. In Psalm 92, the song for Shabbat, we sing, Tzaddik ata amar yifrach. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. Gunther was an upright person, righteous. From his many essays which he shared with family and with Rabbi Weil and me, we know that he was a tzaddik. He believed in social justice for all. He decried racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, and all human rights abuses. The word yifrach is translated as to flourish. The noun version of the word is perach, which is the Hebrew word for flower. Gunther, the gardener par excellence, loved the beauty of nature, God's creation, an advocate for environmental preservation. He was a partner with Adonai to make our world a better place. His keen eye for beautiful plants, trees, and flowers manifested itself in his photography and self-made cards, which he customized for all special occasions. The etrog, hadar, is the fruit of the citron tree. It represents the heart, a place of understanding, a place of wisdom. Like the color of the etrog, Gunther had a golden heart, a person of compassion, a person of understanding, a very wise person. Hadassim, the myrtle leaves, refer to the eyes. It represents enlightenment, reason. With his eyes, Gunther witnessed injustices, and they in turn directed him to action, to confront evil in our world. And finally, the aravot, the willow branches, which represent the lips and the service of the lips, prayers to God. Gunther was never shy to ask hard questions, even of God. The willow is also a sign of respect, of being gentle, of being civil with other human beings. The German poet Goethe once described how one should live his or her life, and he wrote, "Every day we should hear at least one little song, Read one good poem. See an exquisite picture, and if possible, speak a few sensible words. In his vignettes of a lifetime, his own story, Gunther Marx wrote 8 years ago, and he ended with the following words of wisdom, not unlike Goethe's in substance or in sentiment. Gunther writes, "It is a matter of choice to look for the beauty in nature, take pleasure in relationships with good humor and good feelings, practice the good part of any religion, and don't let prejudice cloud your day. Show kindness to your neighbors and follow the 10 Commandments." Rabbi Shlomo Levine, who was Gunther's rabbi for many years at Ezra Abonim when it was located in Chicago, used to conclude his eulogies with the following statement, Yafeh asita lech leshalom. You have done well, extremely well. Go and rest in peace. Meir ben Yitzchak v'Chava Gunther Marx. And I call on Esther for a few words.
Before I say my prepared words, I've said this before about my dad. And I want to tell him one more time. I was a very lucky little girl when I was 10 years old. And he married my mother. Mom, you did well. Even though you didn't know him very long, but I guess it worked. It is fitting that we are here with my dad today, outdoors, on a beautiful October day, the month of his birth. This is a gift that he gave us. His passion was to enjoy the beauty the world has to offer, specifically in the miraculous intricacies of flowers. He knew many of their Latin names and species. Whatever home he lived in, he planted the most beautiful garden. Just this summer, he planted several raised flower beds at the senior living center he and my mom live in. They were the showpiece of the patio. And just a few days ago, he said to me, Esther, make sure you have somebody bring in the geraniums before they freeze. My dad was a modest man with no bravado. He was a man who was soft-spoken, yet spoke volumes through the countless hours he volunteered. In Tucson, it was up to 6 days a week for different organizations. And he also once told me that one of the reasons why he volunteered so much is that he was so grateful to this country. And this is a way of paying back. In the last few years, he spoke eloquently through the essays he wrote. He was a self-educated man, no college, due to the times and circumstances. He gained knowledge instead through his voracious reading. Up until last Monday, he was reading his favorite magazine, The Economist, in the hospital. And he also asked me to please find out the Illinois Bar Association's recommendations for judgeships in the following election. As an aside, my parents recently received their mail-in ballots for the upcoming election. My dad, in his understated way, was politically opinionated. My mother is now kicking herself for not bringing him the ballot last Sunday for him to fill out. I kind of suggested to her that we fill out for him now, but she kind of nixed that. My dad was a joyful person. Last week he told me that he wanted his great-grandchildren to remember that he told silly Papa jokes. His positivity got him through several tragic events in his life. He pushed himself daily. And as most of you know, 2 years ago, he broke his hip, and he painstakingly learned how to walk again. He was determined. In the last few years, he wanted to enjoy every day as he did the other days of his life. This beautiful day, my dad is reminding all of us to make the most of every day and make every day a beautiful one. May he be an inspiration to us all.
Thank you, Esther. And now Karen and Jennifer will say a few words.
Ella tried to tell me about a YouTube hack where I could be able to read and not cry at the same time. But I didn't really understand what she was talking about. So here it goes. You all know the traits that made my grandfather Gunther. His humor, brilliance, integrity, strong work ethic, perseverance, the ability to see the beauty in everything. But you may not know what made my grandfather Papa. Papa was the king of what we referred to as Papa jokes. A couple of weeks ago, we gathered in my mom's backyard on a mild, sunny day. The kind of day that we all know Papa enjoyed. As I was getting dressed that morning in my ripped jeans, I told myself that surely Papa will ask me if I paid extra for the holes. And lo and behold, just a few short minutes into our visit, he looked down at my jeans and asked me that very question. Papa never did disappoint. Papa didn't let anything go to waste. And this somehow even applied to poppy seeds. Most people would be finished with their roll when the bread was gone. Not Papa. After his last bite of bread, Papa licked his finger, collecting each and every poppy seed, putting them into his mouth. Papa never passed up dessert, a trait that he's passed on to subsequent generations. But Papa didn't just eat dessert, he savored it. He had a look of sheer joy as he quietly dug in with his fork. If he caught you watching him, a sly grin spread across his face as if he was doing something naughty. Which, depending on who you asked, I'm looking at you, Gagi, he was. Last week when I spoke with my mom to get an update on Papa in the hospital, she exclaimed, "He orders 2 desserts. L'adore Vador, Papa." I can't talk about Papa without talking about Gagi. We rarely talk about one without the other. It's as if they're one word, Gagi and Papa. As far as grandparents go, these two take the cake, and cookies and ice cream. They say that you don't know what you have until it's gone. But in this case, I've always known how lucky I am. In a world that seems to become more unpredictable with each passing day, knowing that we'd walk through Gagi and Papa's door to find Gagi in the kitchen and Papa in his chair brought about a sense of predictability and comfort. Papa wrote many essays. Many, many essays. He didn't ask for much, but one thing he did ask for was for me to compile them in a book, which I did. His topics ranged from artificial intelligence to politics to the weather and everything in between. His essays give the reader a glimpse into how he viewed the world. In one essay titled A Word to the Wise, written in October of 2016, Papa wrote, "So how can we escape unfortunate moods? Perhaps enter a conversation with words to bring a smile to the face of the listener, or steer our thoughts in a happier direction. Think of something nice to say to a stranger. Point out beauty in our surroundings. Take pleasure in the things you say and do. Share the joy of the day with family and friends. It will make you a better person." Papa, you made all of us better people. And the world is a better place because of you. My kids wrote some things. The originals are going to be buried with Papa. Tessa was short and to the point, just like Papa. She said, "I love you, Papa. I like to take walks with you." And this is from Ella. Tessa's 4, Ella's 7. This is from Ella. "My great-grandfather's life. A few days ago, my great-grandfather died. We were so sad. We loved him so much." She made sure to add an exclamation point. "We love that he smiled so much. We love that he always wants to be with us. Here are some things he likes. His favorite color is blue and red, his great-grandchildren. And I love to go to his apartment with my family. And lastly, I love you, Papa." Okay, I can do this. Maybe. To describe my Papa in just a few words is impossible. I would need a whole day to discuss his attributes. However, I'll do my best. Kind, brilliant, humble, and witty, to name a few. Just 2 Tuesdays ago, I spent the morning at the Botanic Gardens with my Papa, Mom, and Ari, who's 2.5. Ari and Papa were buddies. They were connected. While my Papa was gentle and affectionate with Ari during that visit, he exhibited strength and determination as he pushed himself to stand to take pictures of the flowers. This was Papa in a nutshell. Kind and gentle, yet strong and dignified. Whether it was working at the store, volunteering for countless organizations, caring for his own garden, or recovering from medical interventions,
The display of determination is an understatement. His level of inner strength always shone through, and always without complaint. The need to flee Germany, journeying to the States, and his experiences once here could have easily caused a negative mindset, but it didn't. Negative thinking was not how my papa's brain was wired. As you know, my papa ran a successful jewelry store for 45 years. Yes, his trade expertise was superb, but what made him successful and a part of the community was his personality and demeanor. I like to joke that I wish I had taken over his store because of my love of shiny things. But in actuality, I can easily attribute my social work career to the way I observed Papa live his life. Sitting at restaurants, Papa engaged with the bussers as he would the president. Yes, even our current president. Rather than retiring to Arizona to swim and tend to his garden, Papa volunteered every single day. He was selfless. Yes, I'm grateful for our recent morning at the gardens, but I'm most thankful that without a doubt, I can say that my time with Papa had always been filled with quality moments. Papa was the one to sit on the ground and play grandfather. From flying me up on his knees to do airplane, to bike rides, to gardening together. Mornings with Papa always consisted of matzo coffee, which I still don't understand, and cream of wheat. In true Gagi and Papa form, Gagi had the pot and wooden spoon waiting on the stove for Papa to use the next morning. Papa, I know you told my mom last week that you hope the kids will remember you for your jokes. I promise that when your type of joke is told, I will say, well, that sure sounds like a Papa joke. My kids also drew pictures for Papa, and I almost said Papa and God, it's one word, for Papa, and they will stay with Papa.
Well, unlike everybody else, I didn't get a chance to be close to a typewriter, so I have to read my own handwriting, which is difficult. I think everybody who knew my dad would say he's really a nice guy. He truly was a gentle man. Esther, thank you for everything that you've done for him. You're wonderful. You know, my dad never got mad at me. Except maybe the time he bailed me out of jail for hitchhiking, but maybe I deserved that. For someone who never finished college, he was the most intelligent man I ever knew. He spoke 3 languages, and he could read The Economist from cover to cover, and as everyone else has said, he always had a magazine in his lap, whether it was Time or a book or The Economist. He loved to be with people. I think that his jewelry store was more there to be with people than to sell anything. No one was a stranger for him. It seemed like everywhere we went, he knew someone. It was unbelievable. Material things were not important to him. Nature and beauty was what counted. Every home had a wonderful garden, and his fingers were always in the soil. He loved flowers, and his photos of them were wonderful, and they probably hang in every one of our homes. He and I may not have always agreed, and sometimes we didn't understand each other. Decisions, but I always knew that whatever he said, it came from a place of being about what was best for me. Most of all, whether you know him as Gunther or Papa or Dad, you know he loved you, and I love you too, Dad.
On your handouts, you'll find the 23rd Psalm on the inside panel. We read together. One second. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Please rise as we recite El Malei Rachamim and then the Kaddish. El Malei Rachamim שוכן במרומים, אמצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר רקיע מזהירים, את נשמת מאיר בן יצחק וחווה, שהלך לעולמו. בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו, אנא בעל הרחמים, אז תראהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור חיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן. In the back of your leaflet is the Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבם, ועלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב וידברו, יהי שמי רבם מברך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה ויחו, לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, ואמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. We're going to ask the gentleman here at the cemetery to lower Gunther's casket as we prepare also for the presentation of the flag. Just as a reminder, for those of you who wish to place earth into the grave, you can come forward in a couple moments. The tradition is to place 3 measures of earth without handing the shovel from person to person. If you feel more comfortable with gloves, I have them right on the other side of the road. There's also hand sanitizer. Memorial contributions in his memory to the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center would be appreciated. For those of you who are here at graveside, that information is on the service folder. For those of you who are online, that information is on our website. This time we're just going to turn off the volume for those of you who are online, and you can witness the rest of the burial.
Those we love have passed through the gateway of the grave into the peace of life eternal. We know that all of us must tread the same path, though we know not when the hour may come. Let us so live that the coming of that hour shall find us unafraid. May our deeds do honor to the memory of our beloved, whom you have taken to yourself, trusting in your wisdom and loving kindness, and we praise your name. Go your way, for God has called you. Lech, go your way, and may God be with you. Vehalach, may your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. Amen.
Margot, on behalf of the Office of the President of the United States government, for Gunther's services to our country, I present to you this flag.
This is the earth that was brought to us from Mount Olives in Jerusalem.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's not a lot of space here. What I would suggest, for those of you who can get up, we're going to move the chairs out of the way. So when people are shoveling, I just don't want anybody to trip or fall. I'll get, no, you don't have to. I just want to. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are on live stream, we are going to turn off now the video. Try to have a restful Shabbat. Chag Sameach.